Hello everyone, Anita here and welcome to another video. I know the title seems scary, but I promise it's not as bad as it may seem. I just had a lot of thinking in the past couple of weeks and, well, I came to a lot of weird conclusions that in hindsight they seem obvious, but you know when you're in a certain state of mind and you just don't see things clearly until it hits you and then you're like, oh my god, duh! So I've had a situation like that. Ever since I started painting again, I've had a problem with just pretty much watercolor. I was afraid of it. I didn't want to use it. I used anything I could as long as it wasn't watercolor. But as you can see here, I'm painting with ink and I have absolutely no problem with that. And in fact, I really like painting with ink. So what's the problem? You see, I came to realize that I hate watercolor. Not watercolor the paint, per se, but the watercolor process. You see, I've also came to realize that I am not a painter. I don't consider myself a painter. I don't think I've ever considered myself a painter. Perhaps that's why I had a problem with it coming out of my mouth, because I just don't think I'm a painter, you know? I come up with ideas and I have an idea in my head. And so what happens is I want to put it on paper. I want to make it a reality. And I don't care how it gets there or what makes the idea a reality. I just want that idea out of my head and on paper or on whatever. I just want it out. And see, this is a problem because I really limited myself with watercolor. And it's not really a fault of mine or anybody's. It's just something that happened. As I was maturing as an artist, I just came naturally to realize that, well, it wasn't working. I started with watercolor because that's what I had on hand. It was a very easy medium to use. You didn't have to have any, special equipment like you need with oil paints. You didn't have to wait long. I could dry my painting very quickly. And so it was perfect. Now, if you remember, if you've watched me from the beginning, you will know how much I love my flat washes. I pretty much painted only with flat washes. And the reason why it came to be like this really was because I really wanted to paint digitally. I thought it was a very, a nice way of painting, very forward. And I wanted to paint digitally, but I didn't have a drawing tablet back then or any really means of painting. It was a long time ago, okay? And so I thought, okay, my second best thing is to try and imitate that. And somehow in my head, I started imitating that style with watercolor. And I liked it at first. But as I grew to know more mediums and more things and I started adding, that's when I started to realize that just something wasn't right, I couldn't put my finger on it, but I didn't really like the process of painting. I named it just not so long ago. I hated the process. I loved the result, but the process itself was awful. So I started thinking why that is. And this painting that I'm doing in the background is the result of that thinking. I don't know at the moment what is my process, what it is that I love to make. I don't know what I want to be when I grow up as an artist. I don't know where my goal is. I really don't. Of course, my goal is to earn money, earn a living with my art, as every artist, right? Most artists. Let's not generalize. Most artists. But if I don't know what it is that I'm doing at the moment and what my process is and what I enjoy making, then how can I plan for the future if I don't know myself? So I've decided to focus strictly on the process. And yeah, because I love the ink so much, I decided, okay, I'm gonna try painting with ink. Now, I actually don't like ink that much. I like black ink. Okay, I like one ink, and there is a reason for it. Black ink, the Indian ink, it does not lift with water. Once you put it on paper, it stays there. It does not move. You can layer on top of it. It's perfectly flat. It's just beautiful. I love it. But the other inks I have, they don't have the same property. And now I will stop you before you start commenting. I know there are inks that are similar to Indian ink, so permanent. However, I at the moment do not want to purchase any more art supplies, and so I want to work with what I have. Because I know that it's not about the medium, it's about the process. So once I find out what my favorite thing is, then eventually I can start upgrading my tools. But for now, I need to find out, find the house before I go to the what's. Does that make sense? I hope so. So I started painting. This is actually a painting number 1 in a series. It's not really a series, but I've painted a couple since this was the first one. You'll probably see some of them. If not, you should probably watch me on Instagram because I post them. And I've decided not to stress myself about it. Initially, I didn't want to record it either because recording tends to be stressful because it's another process that you have to pay attention to. However, I really quickly stopped myself thinking like that because this is what I want to do as well. I want to record my process. I have to get used to it. So, like with everything, I tried kind of playing around and seeing what it is that I like or dislike about my recording process. That is why I'm painting on a smaller format. This is an A5. This is actually A5, my favorite Arches paper, 300 gram. A5 because this is like the max size that fits under my camera. I'm recording on my phone, don't judge me. This is the max size that allows me to see still what I'm doing. So when I'm sitting straight, I can still see the top view of my camera, of my phone, while I'm recording. So it's a very easy process to check what I'm doing and I can keep an eye on it. I couldn't do that when I was recording with a wider shot. Now, that actually worked really well. I'm very happy because now I have plenty of footage to show you guys. Like, everybody wins in this situation. So I started with an underpainting made of black Indian ink because I wanted to see what would happen if I started layering colors on top of it. I really like the black Indian ink. It's ever since I did the Inktober 2017, I fell in love with it because it's not only it just spreads beautifully in water, it stays flat, it doesn't lift, it's a perfect medium for me. And the black is really black. It's not as matte as a black gouache, but nothing's perfect. I really like it. So another thing was that I wanted to add a little bit of color, and I still stayed away from watercolor in this particular case, but I have a couple of Ecoline liquid watercolors, so I tried to use that, and I figured if I use one color, it's not going to do anything funky because Ecoline, I know that it lifts a little bit. So I used, in this case, this really nice purple, and I just tried something. I tried to do some washes. I really didn't put any pressure on myself. The moment I felt like I was thinking about something too long, I stopped myself and I turned it off. I tried to do the most natural thing that I could think of. Even worse, or even better, I tried to do the most natural thing that I didn't think of. I wanted to go from instinct because once I start thinking about things, I overthink and it stresses me out in painting. A lot of paintings, especially in the later, let's say in the late 2018, just before I stopped painting, and you can watch those videos back if you're interested, but I remember that I was trying new things. I was kind of confused about what I wanted to do. For the Animal Artist Collective, I tried different things. I was doing the layered paintings because I knew that something was wrong and I needed more freedom. I felt very limited. And so in this case, I wanted to do only things that were not limiting me. So I wanted to do a landscape because I wanted to not really imagine too much. I just wanted to focus on shapes, on colors, on techniques, just trying to find what felt natural and fluid. I don't know how to explain it. It's just something that felt very, very natural to me and didn't feel gritty. I know it's a very weird way of explaining this, but I hope you get what I mean. You can see me doing this a little bit now. I started adding branches at the bottom of the painting, and then I just kind of went up with that same colored pencil, and I'm just doing random lines, and they're not really trees. Eventually, they kind of became trees, but they weren't supposed to be. I was just putting the random lines and seeing, or rather trying to follow where my hand would guide me. It's very counterintuitive to me because from the very beginning in painting, I was trying to be in control. And back then, I don't know if maybe back then it was the right way to approach painting for me, but right now, I crave the freedom. I crave just painting how I want to paint, and I feel like most of my problems is that I put too many limitations on myself in regards to what I paint, how I paint, what it's for. I figured, when you're an artist and you're a working artist, you definitely think about what your paintings are going to do to earn their share. What are you going to sell them? Are they going to be prints? I'm sure, 99% sure that every single artist who sells art for a living thinks about it on a certain level. It's just what you do. This is your living. But as an artist, you also need some freedom to create freely. You need the freedom. That's what I want to say. You need to feel that, I feel the juices flowing, something like that. And I didn't feel that. And it was because of me. I've limited every single, let's say, outside source. I don't take commissions. I don't take freelance work anymore. And I still couldn't paint like I used to. So there had to be a different problem. And I've realized that the problem was just in me. If I don't know how I want to do it, then, nothing else is going to fall in place. I think at the moment, things change. Let's get used to that. So that's what I'm doing as all the time. You can see me in the background, just keep adding lines and I like this very soft detail in painting that comes from colored pencils. I don't like hard textures as like what you would imagine with cold pressed watercolor paper. I don't like that texture. That's why I'm painting on a hot pressed paper, because it has a paper texture that's not like, let's say, a printer paper, which is completely smooth. There is a texture there, but it's so delicate. It almost feels velvety to me. And when I layer some colored pencil on top, it picks up a little bit of that texture and it just looks so smooth and buttery. I really, really like that effect. So it was natural for me to go for it. I don't really use the colored pencil like you would imagine it in a real colored pencil painting, when you just keep layering the colors until you don't see the paper, let's say. I use it a little bit more like watercolor. I want to see the background through my colored pencil. I want everything to kind of layer together. I love transparencies. That's one thing I'm sure of. I just don't want to put them in watercolor because watercolor pisses me off. I'm sorry. It just makes me very angry. When I put something on paper, I want to stay there. I want it to stay there. Now, gouache is one exception to that rule. But gouache doesn't lift the way watercolor does, and that's the only reason why I'm using it. Gouache is amazingly opaque, so I can build up that opacity. One thing you have to remember when you're working with gouache, that it might seem very, very white with white gouache. It might seem very white when it's wet, but as it dries, it's going to be completely translucent. It can be layered, and then I always add a little bit of colored pencil on top for that extra texture, and it's beautiful. I love it. And the way it behaves is that it lifts even more than watercolor. Because watercolor, depending on which type you use, when you put water on, let's say, when you keep layering it up, like you would in glazing, for example, maybe I'm just not, that's probably it. I'm not careful enough so that the layer underneath stays put. My layers always lift. It also depends on, of course, the watercolor you use, but I really liked my watercolor and the colors and the vibrancy of them. So, the way I talk about it, I want the medium to work for me and not the other way around. I don't have any interest in learning how to properly paint in watercolor. I want to put an idea on paper. I honestly don't care what I'm going to use to put it down, as long as it works and it's easy and it's fast, decently fast, because you still need some patience. And so mixed media is definitely a way to go. It's just, I need to figure out what media, how to mix them so that the effect satisfies me. And this painting was the first one in a very, very long time that I was absolutely satisfied with. I had nothing to say that was, let's say, negative. Well, not even negative. I didn't have criticism. It was just a little experiment. I was happy with it. I learned what I liked. I learned what I didn't like. And honestly, I was so happy with it, and I was so refreshed by this painting that I immediately wanted to paint another one. And I had to stop myself because I was supposed to paint only one per day, max, because I tend to overdo it. Another one of my problems. And then I don't paint for a very long time. So better a little bit at a time, but every day. And I kept adding little details. I wanted to see if I could add some white lines. Did I want to, because these are supposed to be bushes, did I want to add more details to my bushes? Did I want to add leaves? I like lines. I like everything to be nice and flowy, so that's what I did. And I really couldn't wait to paint another one. So that is a very good sign for me, because every time I finished a painting in the past, I was tired. Especially going through those middle stages of a painting when everything tends to be rather questionable, that was really hard on me. And so I really didn't feel like making another one, but you have to. So I've learned a lot in this little experiment, and I'm going to be making a lot more of them. I don't know if this will be exactly the same concept, but for now, at this point, I'm still very much in love with this little tiny, let's say, blackish underpainting that I'm doing. It really lets me set down the tone of the painting. I like it. It gives me like the basic shadows. And it's so easy to blend for me that I want to keep using it. And oh yes, the bunnies. So I've been doing a landscape painting, right? And at this point, I remember thinking that, oh yeah, when you do a landscape painting, you're supposed to put something in for, let's say, the living bit, so that it seems more alive and it seems more to scale, so that, let's say, if you put a little person or a bird or a horse butt, you're going to know more or less how big, what the scale is. But I didn't know what to put, and I definitely didn't want to put a person, nor a horse butt, nor a bird. So I was like, I'm going to put just a random buddy just for kicks and giggles. And the funny thing is that in the next one, I tried to do the same, but I put a little witch on a broom all the way in the distance. I was laughing so hard at myself. And then I figured it was pretty silly, but in that moment, it seemed pretty funny to me. So, you know. Why ghosts? Last note I wanted to say here. I really tried very, very hard to stay away from magical things when I was painting because it was supposed to be just a landscape experiment. I had a random photo I found on Pinterest. This was supposed to be just simple reference, just to see where it would take me. I didn't want to have, I wasn't painting a landscape. I was just kind of using it as inspiration for the shape. And it just felt lacking to me until I put those little ghosts. I don't even know if they're ghosts, they're just some kind of shapes flying through the forest. When I put them in, it just felt right. I cannot live without magic, guys. For me, magic is what brought me to painting. I wanted to show my magical ideas. Landscape just don't do it for me. They never did. I remember when I was very young and I had to paint a landscape. And I wondered why, because it was so boring to me. I don't mind if someone else does it, but to me it's just super boring. I can't help it. So it has to have a magical element, and I keep adding them in all of them. It's also exercising my imagination a little bit because I don't want it to be purely magic. I want it to be just a little tiny little grain of magic here and there. So it's fun. It's fun to think of little shapes that are easy to put in a landscape or in a little painting. And that will change everything to be more magical. So here you can see me struggling with the tape. I got better at it the more I was taking it off. But I tried not to move the painting too much, and it really didn't work. You really have to struggle with it to take it off with one hand. You need both hands to take off tape. But I really wanted to show it because it's so satisfying when you take it off, and I always wanted to show it in videos, and now I can. I don't think I've ever did that. Did I? I don't remember. But anyway, that's it for today, guys. Thank you so very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed my little experiment. There will be definitely more of them. I hope you will like it. Thank you so very much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!